The Cloud Sheep. Once upon a time, there was a young shepherd called Lempik Dal. He lived high up in the mountains of the Randu Kush, where the grass is sweet and the air is thin. There he tended a flock of cloud sheep. Now, cloud sheep, for those of you who don't already know, are extremely small. In fact, they're no bigger than an average guinea pig, but in other respects they look just like normal sheep. They have coats of thick, fluffy wool, and they graze on the blue grass that grows high up on the slopes of the Randu Kush. They're called cloud sheep because at a distance, and even quite close up, they look just like white clouds against the sky-blue grass. Lempik Dal's cloud sheep were some of the best in the mountains, and their wool was highly prized. Cloud sheep wool is so light that it actually floats. In fact, the most important part of the job of a shepherd like Lempik was to stop his flock being blown away on the mountain breeze. That's why cloud shepherds carried large nets, rather like butterfly collectors' nets, instead of crooks. Cloud sheep wool was far too precious to be used in cardigans or scarves. Instead, it was used by the carpet weavers of the Randu Kush in their extraordinary and some would say magical flying carpets. Not only were Lempik Dal's cloud sheep some of the best in the mountains, but he was also married to one of the finest carpet weavers in those parts. Now, for those of you who don't already know, flying carpets are extremely rare because it takes a lot of cloud sheep wool to make one, not to mention an extremely skilled weaver. Most weavers use only a thread or two of actual cloud sheep wool in their so-called flying carpets, and very few ever made a carpet that was more than half cloud sheep and half normal sheep wool. But Lempik Dal's wife Nina regularly made carpets that were half and half, and once she even made one of 100% pure cloud sheep wool, something that was practically unheard of. Now, a half and half flying carpet won't actually fly as such, but it will float, and it can certainly cushion a fall from a great height very effectively. The mountains of the Randu Kush are extremely steep, and people are always falling off them, which is why Nina Dal's carpets were in high demand. Then one day, an intrepid story collector called Wilfred Macpherson arrived in the mountains. He had been heading for the frozen north when his Crane & Sons aeronautical snow chariot Mark I had been blown off course by a terrible storm. Unfortunately, the terrible storm had also blown every flock of cloud sheep in the Randu Kush, including Lempik Dal's, off the mountain. He and his wife were heartbroken, not to mention financially ruined. When the story collector heard their tale, he suggested that they come home with him to the town of Harbour Heights and set up a carpet business there. Wilfred Macpherson was always doing this sort of thing. Take the pygmy snowmen he came across in the frozen north, for example, but that's another story. Anyway, that's just what Lempik and Nina Dal did, and they lived very happily there. And when they retired to the Randu Kush, their daughter Mina took over the shop, much to the joy of her best friend, Wilfred Macpherson's daughter, Phillida.
Memo from Bernard Bumble to Bumble Bakers. Urgent. Add half a ton of sawdust to every 3 tons of flour. Add more glue to the toffee glazing. No one will notice. We can double the profit on every bun. Now, turning to the meat pies.
Hugo followed Daisy and Lily Neptune as they swished out of Neptune's nautical antiques. Lily paused and turned the sign on the front door over to show closed before shutting it. "Not that it matters," said Daisy to Hugo gloomily. "Business is so bad at the moment." Hugo was dressed in a large sou'wester, a stripy vest, wide canvas trousers, and a nautical overcoat that was several sizes too big for him. "It doesn't do to draw attention to oneself," Daisy had told him, packing away his reindeer herder clothes. "Not these days. It seems everybody gossips about everyone else. Not nice stories either." "The worse the better, in fact," said Lily, casting an eye at the building opposite. "And it's all the fault of the Firefly Quarterly." She shuddered as she glided along the pavement to the shop next door but one. The sign above the doorway read, "Dal and Daughter, Rug Restorers." "It's probably better if you allow us to break the news to Mina. whispered Daisy, pushing open the door and ushering Hugo inside. "After all, she was your mother's best friend." Hugo took a deep breath and entered the shop. It was dark and very quiet inside, with a heady, perfumed scent in the air. Large, ornately patterned carpets hung in rows from racks overhead like a series of heavy curtains. In one corner, by the window, a tiny dog was reclining on a cushion. Its head was cocked to one side, and it seemed to be looking intently at the space a few feet above where it lay. As Hugo watched, a small, dusty-coloured moth fluttered up from behind a carpet. Instantly, the little dog launched itself high in the air and caught the moth in its jaws with a single snap. Hugo blinked. "That's Tick-Tick," said Daisy, closing the shop door behind her. "He's a moth dog. No carpet shop should be without one." "Daisy, is that you?" came a musical voice from a room at the back of the shop. "Come through, and bring that sister of yours with you." "We brought someone special to see you, Mina, dear," called Lily. "But first I've got some rather sad news to tell you." Lily swished past the carpets, brushing them aside, and disappeared into the back room. Daisy stood beside Hugo with her hand on his shoulder, while Tick-Tick snapped up several more moths that had been disturbed when they entered. A few moments later, Hugo heard a small scream, followed by some quieter sobbing, and Lily's voice saying, There, Mina. We did what we could." Then, "You'd better come through now, Hugo dear." He felt Daisy's hand on his shoulder urging him on, so he pushed through the carpets and entered the back room. It was, he discovered, surprisingly large. The walls were lined with shelves on which were stacked rolls of carpets, balls of wool, and racks of long darning needles. A large wooden frame took up most of the far wall, upon which a worn-looking carpet had been stretched. And next to it, halfway between the floor and the ceiling, a woman hovered. She had long hair pulled back and plaited, and was wearing a smock and baggy trousers, which were gathered in at the ankle, and a pair of pointy carpet slippers of unusual design. Lily Neptune was sitting on a large wooden bench below her, polishing her green spectacles with Hugo's blanket spread out at her tail. As Hugo approached, the woman clicked her heels together and sank slowly to the floor to face him. Up close, Hugo could see she had been crying, but she smiled bravely now as she ruffled his hair gently with one hand. "So you're Phillida's little boy, are you?" she said. "Yes, I can see the resemblance." For a moment, Hugo thought she was going to burst into tears, but instead she continued, "I'm Mina. Your mother was my best friend. I begged her not to go on that last voyage with your father. We all knew it was headed for disaster, but she wouldn't listen. And of course, she could never have left you behind." Mina shook her head sadly. "So I gave her one of my mother's finest flying carpets to keep her safe." "You mean the blanket I was wrapped up in is a flying carpet?" gasped Hugo, looking at the worn threadbare fabric at Lily's tail. "The finest cloud sheep wool, and half, said Mina. "Don't you see, Hugo? Your mother wrapped you up in it to keep you safe." Hugo nodded. There was a lump in his throat. "But how did you know the voyage was headed for disaster?" he asked, bewildered. "How could anybody possibly know my parents were going to get eaten by polar bears?" "That, dear Hugo," said Daisy, who had been standing behind him, "is a different cup of tea entirely."
Shoulder bone shake home and take home.